Do this again. Welcome to the panel. I'm excited to have these three guests here. I get to embarrass her again. Janice Lowe, writer, composer, pianist, my artistic crush since I was young. My man Fred Joyner, who has known me since when we were young kids running around DC trying to make art. And Dimitry, who I've known for 1,000 years, because when he was at The Source, I was at Daily Challenge, and we were both editors trying to make our way in the world, trying to figure out how we're gonna pay for lunch or get these stories out in the world.
Yeah.
It sounds funny now, but it wasn't funny back then.
No, it hasn't changed much since.
Also, very important, Janice is the author of Leaving CLE, Leaving Cleveland. It's an amazing book. I got a chance to speak at her release. One thing Janice did that I love, because I'm also a musician, she kind of scored her book, a soundtrack to her book. And that was amazing. And it's another level of art and activism. Fred is on a new anthology that came out through Furious Flower, correct?
Yep.
And you know he's also the poet laureate of Colorado in North Carolina, which is a big deal. Hey, don't smile at that. And he has 2 lovely children. Dimitry, also with 2 lovely children, is the author of God Loves Haiti, an amazing book that's well renowned and got a lot of acclaim. I'm gonna jump right into this. Black Utopia requires artists and activists to kind of work in conjunction. So I want to go into this first question. Let's not play around. We got 45 minutes.
Sure.
The role of the artists and activists is changing. This summer of protest and activation was led by artists and athletes. How do you guys, starting with Janice, how do you envision the next stage for the artist activists?
Next stage of the artist activist, I think we're in that stage, and we're seeing some really good models for artists and community working together. And like for example, with the Astor Gates and the Rebuild Foundation, he and Samaria Rice, the mother of Tamir Rice, have been in communication, and he's been very supportive of her efforts with the Tamir Rice Foundation. She wants to build a school. She's working on an after-school program that involves the arts. And you know, the child was killed when he was playing in the gazebo, and so the Gates helped Samaria Rice, you know, with the dismantling of that. They brought it to Chicago. They put it back up. They did some programs around it. And I really think that Samaria Rice is really part of this conversation with how do you not profit, you know, off the death of a family member, and how do you link up to then do things that are life affirming, that involve the family and the community, and not just some art put on somebody or some piece put on somebody, but a real link up.
Dimitry, how do you see it? I know you're on right now. You're on the beach, but you are also on across the pond and on this side of the pond. So you see art and activism from 2 parts of the world. So how do you envision the next stage?
Well, I'm inclined to agree with Janice that we're already in it. Black Lives Matter over the summer took so many different colors and touched the entire planet in so many ways. I mean, the photography that came out of that alone could fuel protests and inspire so much more art for years to come. And there are other works like Black Futures, the new book that came out last week. That's a terrific mix of visual arts and literature. Small Acts, you know, Steve McQueen's series on Amazon about Black life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in, you know, no subtitles, or sometimes I need them. Unadulterated, raw, unfiltered Afro-Brit life. 5 movies from every angle you could imagine. From kids trying to do a party, from a guy trying to run a bodega, a restaurant, from a kid who wants to become a cop, to show the British cops that, you know, there's a better way of policing.
Yes,
now, that's a story. And it's a beautiful story because his dad got beat up by the cops. So the work is being done in both literature, film, and photography. I know for me personally, I write about Haitians, and I always wanted to write about Haitians, but it took me a long time to get there, to figure out how to write about probably the people who are the worst brands in the world. And I only wrote my book when I was 40. And along the way, the message that blew me away was came from Kanye West, of our people. Kanye West said, you know, if I rap about God, my record won't get played. Remember that? Remember that?
I know that quote. If I rap about drug dealers and the N-word, I'll get a lot of love.
Yep. And it's like, you know what? I'm gonna make this song about God preparing to take a L and assuming I'm gonna take a L, because a Christian rap song can't exist in a commercial way, won't get played on the radio. Right. I'm gonna take the L. And when it came, and I took that nugget, and I'm Catholic, I'm a man of faith, and when I saw my people at their worst hour after the earthquake, I mean, I wanted to write a prayer. And I had to write, and then the book finally came to me, but it was a prayer for my people. And It was a prayer with the understanding, the permission that Kanye gave me that, you know what, this probably won't sell, won't make me a penny. Hell, it never even get published, and I never see it in stores. But it's duty, it's honor, it's faith, and you got to give it a go. And I feel that way about art in general, Black art in general, where the more we go into the search for dignity, the search for human rights,
hold on to that one. Hold on to that
element of not commercial.
Right.
It's very non-commercial. You can't do it for a living. You can do it for money. You got to do it with the sense of.
Hold on to the money conversation. I want to get to that later.
But
so
that's how
I know.
Activism.
So Fred, you answered this question. I kind of know your answer already. You have been an activist from the day I met you, and we're talking 20-something years here. Even though I'm only 27, right? We're talking 20-something years here. How do you see the next stage? Being you are heavy in activism for a long time, and obviously your work now is always geared toward change.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. I think I like what Janice said about Theaster Gates and about space and about like the built environment, because and I also echo that sense that we're already in it. A few things that I wanted to just mention is that I think one of the ways that artists I took the question of the title of this panel a little bit more literally and thinking about actual space, creative space. And so that made me start thinking about ownership and not just ownership like in a capital way, like in a monetary way, but also in owning the space, the collective space that we occupy whenever we are somewhere. And so that led me to a few different things. First, I thought about this sister out in Oakland. I think her name is Ashara Ekindayo, and she talks about this idea, talks about artists as first responders. Artists are already doing that, right? Like we're already providing a language and a space for people to work this stuff out. I always think of Baraka when Baraka said, I think he was talking about Billie Holiday, and when he said that if she didn't,
which Baraka? Yeah, you know, young people.
Amiri Baraka, rest in peace, right? When he said, I think he said about Billie Holiday, if she didn't sing these songs, she'd be slit somebody's throat. If somebody's out there who's listening who knows the singer he was talking about, mention that. I think it was Billie Holiday, but just the idea that artists are provided, we're taking in all the stuff in society and we're putting stuff back out into the world in a way that it's digestible and that it moves us to do the things that we do. So I think about that. I also think about another sister who's up there in New York, Ebony Noel Golden.
Yes,
and
yes.
And like her performances and her theater work and her movement work and getting people to occupy space,
yes,
wherever they move, like that is very important work. So it's self-defining, it's self-determining, it's self-determining. And so I was thinking about that. And then obviously we were talking about the theater gates and the gazebo and repurposing, you know, with repurposing that space as a memorial and trying to and salvaging it. Because I think if I'm not mistaken, they were going to tear that gazebo down. If I wasn't, I think it was actually, I think they actually rescued the gazebo because they were going to tear it down. If I'm not mistaken, and then I think about the work that Theaster is doing in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, and how well, I'm not sure if it's south side, but wherever his rebuild foundation is, the work that he's doing in reclaiming space, right? And reclaiming space and making it spaces that say something about who we are, right?
So let's jump on that for spaces for a second. And spaces and the actual, and spaces and money. Oftentimes, I'll say his name. So Desan and I often just talk about how institutions and spaces, governments, will come to us after the idea has been formed, rather than using us during the formation of the idea. The difference is gigantic. If you come to me after the idea is formed, I'm often fixing your problem rather than fixing the larger problem. So starting with, I'll start backwards. I go to Dimitry this time. So if spaces, institutions going to use artists, at what juncture should we join? That's number one. Number two, and I want a short answer to this one. Number two, if they don't come to us properly, how do we then remove ourselves or adjust ourselves if they come to us incorrectly? So the question again is, if spaces and institutions don't come to us from the jump, how do we join? And second, if they don't want us to join, what do we do next?
I come at this as a late bloomer. And the patron saint of late bloomers in literature is Toni Morrison. When she finally got her first novel done, she was a single mother of two in her late 30s, early 40s. But she plugged away, but she had a job at Random House. And so she was working a day job, if you will, in the game, while at the same time trying to find her voice.
Right.
My answer to making spaces institutions always comes back to the fact that, and I always often tell this to my closest friends, which is that no one will care about your voice and your art and your activism more than you. Producing the art is one phase. Writing the book is only one phase. Telling the poem is one phase. The next phase of getting it heard and read and getting paid for it is the second phase. It may take you longer than it took to write the thing, but you have to be ready for that.
Okay.
And then after that, finding a publisher, like finding a record label, getting the marketing and the PR out is going to be another job. All three phases are 3 day jobs that you have to be prepared to do and spend your own resources, your own blood and sweat to get through it. And the rappers in the 90s and the 80s, they prepared us for this. That's what they had to do. Remember, they couldn't get played on the radio. They had to come up with other ways to get their records played. And I think today, the Black artists in any medium, if you're determined to tell stories that are not conventional, that are unexpected, and that actually aim to inspire Black people, be prepared to create, sell, and market your ass off. And a publisher may come along, a record label may come along, a platform may come along, but be prepared to fight for it. And the back end of that, even after the platform, the back end of working to get that thing known and heard and consumed is going to be another job. And you have to be ready to fight for it. And so no knows for an answer.
Fred, how would you apply that thinking? That's actually really good thinking. How would you apply that thinking to institutions, be it government? Because you work a lot. We talked about this with government as well as with
Yeah, I think and somebody's already typed this in the chat. I think to get inside. So right now, I think that you go.
So Haley wrote that.
Right.
That was
And
it, right.
yeah, I think getting involved with organizations and institutions and finding out how they work. And Suhaili said dismantle them from the inside. And I think that's one way to do it. But I think another way to do it is to also take all that knowledge that you learned from them. And somebody else said this up the chat too, is build your own institution, right? Build your own institution. I was involved with an institution called the American Poetry Museum in Washington, D.C. And that grew out of my man, John Westbay, who who grew tired of working for other people's museums and realized he could do it himself and he could put it behind something that he was passionate about. So now, almost 20 years later, this organization is still thriving. And then he and I partnered to develop this organization called the Center for Poetic Thought in Washington, D.C., which is a space to do whatever we want. I mean, we don't own it outright, but we're as close as we can come to owning it at this stage of, being capitalized in a certain way. But so yeah, I think one method is learn from those institutions, and either, if you can, dismantle them. But if you don't have the energy to do that, take that energy that you would use to dismantle them and build your own, right? Find other like-minded folks to like build your own institutions, and do that. Redirect the energy, right? Because some of these institutions are going to die hard, the same way we see like white supremacy, in its death knell right now, or in what we hope is its death knell. I'd rather spend that energy building my own institution. For me, so some people want to fight that fight. And then secondly is
it's actually thirdly, we're good.
Yeah, thirdly is getting involved. I also volunteer with the Orange County Arts Commission here in North Carolina. Again, because I'm there to learn about funding streams. I'm there to learn about how to do things from a governmental standpoint, learn about zoning. So if I want to build my own building or rent out a space and have an outdoor space, I want to learn about all those kinds of things. All those things I think are important.
Janice, you and I were texting earlier, and you were talking about the high profile and the low profile. You were actually listing some institutions. To attach this question to our conversation via text, how do you see using art and or activism, or both, as a dismantle, as a fix, and as a learning tool?
Well, one of the things.
Pick one.
Okay. Well, even as an audience member, I just want to speak as an audience member for a second. And however I'm accessing a play, a musical performance, whatever it is, through virtual platforms now, and then eventually when we go back in person, what that will be. Am I going to spend all my time and money building up white institutions? Am I going to spend just as much time supporting Black-run, Indigenous-run, Latinx-run presenting institutions? I mean, we can complain all day about people not letting us in the door, but we also have to support and learn about and share information about institutions that have been around for a long time and new ones that are starting that need our support even more. So I, for example, respect that Dominique Morisseau reached out to Detroit Public Theater, and now she's an artistic advisor, and that is just so incredibly important. And I also respect that she works closely with Billie Holiday Theater. Let me big up Brooklyn, Billie Holiday Theater, and Jared Waru and Hollis King, and everything that they're doing to make that theater a vital community connected institution in Brooklyn. I mean, there have been times when, back before COVID, trying to get tickets to events at Billie Holiday Theater. I couldn't even get a ticket. Do you know how major that is? We all remember when people didn't want to go to Brooklyn. So that is, and that you can duplicate those stories by, many artistic institutions around the country that are run by people of color. They exist. We got to learn about them and share the information and support them at the same time that we're supporting the new artistic directors and artistic advisors and the directors that are, are so experienced and so talented. They should have been working at these places, for a long time. But yeah, I'm gonna.
I want to echo and add to that, which is that I've been a writer since I was 20, and through the institutions I've gone through, I wrote mostly for Black institutions, Black magazines for a long time. Then I went to some mainstream magazines, and I've gone back to Black institutions. And even by the time I came back into publishing, as in the literary fiction world, my editor was Black, and that's my way of saying that you got to support artists of color all along the way, and you have to support editors and program managers of color in the game. Basically, that community is there. That one Black person in an institution, everyone has them, and they're peers of ours. They may know us, you may not know. We have to connect with them and support their work. That has to be part of our lives. I buy my books every time I go in the publishing house. Every time I go into Natalie Jackson, because I'm like, she's family. She's family for life. And all my editors since day one, most of them were writers of color and editors of color. It's just by great coincidence. By the time I started flirting with the visual arts, my producer happens to be a brother from the islands. It's just inevitable. But if you stay championing the community will champion you too, will support you too. But it has to be a way of life. It can't be dipping in when it's time to sell something. It has to be like, I'm my friend's biggest fans. I'm a groupie of them. Mm-hmm. And if I'm lucky, I've been lucky, they always return the love. They always return the love. The love has been part of our conversation since we were 20, and now we're all 50. Yes. And this is how we roll. When we're driving Ubers, or whether we're publishing, or whether we're producing a short story.
That's right.
That's the key right there. Dimitry. That's the key right there. When moving. I met Ty with my editor. My editor. We introduced us last winter. We knew each other back in the day, but last winter, my editor reconnected us. My editor is like the best. So that's the key. I understand. Now that's the key right there, to move this kind of conversation from the arts into everyday life. Are you supporting the corner store that's Black owned? Not just the artist. Are you supporting the Black architect, the Black plumber, the Black masonry, the Black cobbler? When we're doing that, now the artistic and activists meet each other, and we're moving. Because I'm gonna use this conversation
at that point.
Right. So
it's community. Community has to be community all the time.
So a Black Lives Matter leader, who's also a client, I'll be honest, Chiosei has said recently that the Black Lives Matter movement is not just about public safety; it's about how we reimagine our interaction with each other and the larger community. So, an idea of reimagining is ask these questions. So, Janice, give me 3 ways, and because it's 3 of y'all, you gotta be quick about it. You got 5 minutes each of you, and one more time, I'm gonna do a Simone timing here when we do this. Shout out to Simone for the back end work, y'all. Big up to Simone. We keep all this together. Tell me 2 or 3 ways that you have seen, you've used your art to activate or to show activism or progression for community.
Okay, so I wrote a piece about civil rights activist in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who nobody was talking to about the life he lived and the strategy. People were holding the strategy so close that they weren't sharing it, but they didn't think maybe anybody wanted to hear about it. And they got really, really good at keeping secrets about the safe houses, from when civil rights workers were traveling back and forth and nobody knew where they were, but somebody knew where they were. All of the meetings that they had about strategy. So, there's a lot that hasn't been written yet. And there's a lot that people have to share that are still on the planet. And there's a lot that people, want to share. They want to talk about, they want to share the knowledge with younger people, not to say this is how you should do it because we did it that way, but because the exchange creates energy and contributes to forward motion.
Right.
Come
What's
back
the
to me.
second
I'll tell
one?
you some more. Come back to me. I'll tell you some more.
That was slick. I like that. That was slick. That was slick. You see why she's my artistic crush, Fred? You see what I'm saying? So, Fred, give me 2 or 3 practicals. Janice gave us a practical. She took a person who has been successful, presented to larger communities. Give me 2 or 3. You gave me one already, actually, with the sentence you built. So you got a little leeway. You
the center.
Yeah.
I'll go. I think shrinking it, right, going to a specific thing. I wrote a poem a few years back after reading this newspaper article about this young guy in Prince George's County, Maryland, who got beat up by a bunch of other kids. They were kids basically, and they hit him in the head with a metal pipe, and he died. And he was good. His father was an Army Ranger, and he was about to go to Ranger school. And in the article, the recruiter says, "I wish we could have gotten him out of there earlier." And I'm like, wait a minute, you're about to take this kid to Iraq. Like, that's not a thing. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're trying to get him out of that environment, but take him to Iraq where he could also die for like empire and craziness. Like, what was that? It was just nuts. So I wrote that poem, and it got published on a website, and in the family, I remember his name. I'm not going to call it because I don't their privacy. Yeah. But the family found the poem, and in the next year when they had a memorial service, they read the poem and I was like, okay, like that's all I could ask for as a poet and writer to have. I mean, you could ask for more, but that somebody felt that touched by what I had written to read it at the memorial for their family. So like, I don't know if that's what you were looking for in terms of like.
No. See, I mean, clear. This is the question.
I love that, Fred. I love that.
No. That is the right answer. There are no right answers, and that is the right answer. There's a case where using art as I think sometimes artists forget. That's where this came from. And I think myself and Tasha talked about this a few times. How the art, sometimes we forget that art is practical for someone.
Yeah.
You guys know my book. No Jewels is a book about abuse and oppression. I put it out into the world. It's about me and 2 other guys. I've gotten emails, phone calls, DMs, messengers of people who have taken parts of the book and allowed it to fit around them. And then we also created programming to help other people. So there are no right answers or wrong answers. Your answer actually, blew me away. Janice's answer blew me away. But you still got one more to do, brother. You ain't off the hook. You're not as cute as Janice. You can't pull it off. Sorry.
I mean, wow, examples. I mean, from my personal story, again, the work, again, like right now, the work that when you transition out of a curatorial role. So I used to be the curator at the American Poetry Museum, and I had my hands in it. And now, after moving to North Carolina, after moving back from Mali, back to the United States from Mali, I had to step back and like basically hand over the reins to somebody else. To me, that was an exercise in like letting the art do something different in the community. Like the brother who's doing it right now, this brother named Sammy Miranda, awesome poet and artist and just a creative wellspring, right? He just letting go of the reins of something that you've spent so much time cultivating, like, to me, that was, I don't know if I would call that activism. I tried to be as
Fred,
generous. I tried to be
Fred,
generous.
that is activism. I'll even give you one you did that I know of. When you guys were doing the monthly performance, I did the first one. I forget what it was called. It was something at the Children's Museum. You guys would bring us in front of young people to perform. That's activism, brother.
Yeah.
That's practical use.
I just do the work and let everybody else sort out what it's called. I just do the work.
All right, Dimitri. We know the work of the source. The source was amazing work. Shout out to Fahim. I think Fahim was watching this from somewhere. Shout out to you, Fah, and the work you guys did. Some of you guys are now making movies. Shout out to my big brother. I'm not gonna say his name. He's making movies out there, making it happen. I don't want to tell his business. But you,
my three quick examples are, one, I remember when I brought the book to Haiti, and I got on TV in Haiti. It was a great fight to get the book to Haiti because actually physically I had to bring 100 books with me. And my publisher didn't want to give me the books. She wanted to sell me the books for $100, for like 50% off, instead of giving me a book called God Loves Haiti to bring to bookstores in Haiti. It was a struggle, but I managed to get the books and I had to bring them myself. And then we have a library, a central library that distributes the book to every library in the country. Everybody gets 10 apiece, something like that. But when I got on TV to be interviewed about the book, the brother interviewing me, his English wasn't strong enough to read the thing because the book's in English and it's a French-speaking country. He nervously asked me, okay, the title, it's like, it could be the best title ever for a Haitian book, unless you're making fun of us. Unless it's an ironic title.
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Because since the earthquake, Haitians are very proud, but the earthquake shook us, pun intended. It almost broke us. And it's like, for the first time, people were wondering, well, does God really have it in for us? It's a natural disaster. We can't blame the Americans for it. So people were thinking about that. And Sonny was like, well, this title, are you thinking, could God really love us? Or are you making fun of the fact that God probably seems to hate us? And I'm not one to give away the end of a book, and you shouldn't do that. But I got to reassure him, and we got to have a conversation about that. I was like, well, actually, it's more of a tribute than it is a ironic diss. Then he was like, damn, okay, now I need a t-shirt, I need a mug, I need a baseball cap with the cover of the book on it.
Yes.
And the second one was when I was on tour and getting ready to and start working on the second book. And a gentleman, seemingly nice gentleman from Canada, and Canadians are nice people. He's like, dude, I really love the book, but really, are you gonna write about Haitians again? And I was like, oh, guess what? I'm still Haitian. So I'm glad you like the book. I'm glad you want me to write about other people. But you know what? I'm going to write about my people because you don't think I should. And that's why I stake that territory. I'm taking that territory. But there is going to be that resistance moving forward from people who don't think it's worth literary fiction, particularly the kind I write, which is kind of romantic. So that was the second example. That's the example where the mission itself could get challenged because it probably could be more lucrative to write about other people, to write about Black Americans, to write about being American and whatever. And lastly,
where are you right now, brother?
Lastly, I would say the third example would be that, look, it took me forever to get my publishing deal. And I stood on the shoulders of all these writers who supported me along the way with blurbs. Like I got blurbs before I could find a publisher. So I stand to blurb any upcoming writer, any novelist got a work in progress or got a manuscript that he's trying to get out there or she's trying to get out there. I'm here to support her, because before I could publish a word of fiction, writers who were established, had Pulitzers, were like, no, this is dope. Keep hustling, keep fighting for a publisher. It's worth the fight. And I had to fight for 2 years. But during those 2 years, Cass came through, and I'm here, and when I spread the word, I'm here to support anybody trying to get on, any way, shape, or form, whether it's looking for an agent or looking for an editor. I got you, because we need that. Because I had that.
We're not going to avoid. So, Fred, you saw he avoided my question, right? I want a witness on that.
So, activism. This is my activism.
He's at where he's at.
No, but you saw, because I'm gonna say straight uptown. You know, I'm not from Brooklyn. I just live in Brooklyn. I'm an uptown kid. Yonkers in the Bronx. So I'm gonna be real clear. You're Bronx. Right now, where you are is also based on your art, but not actually your art. You want to talk? You don't want to talk about that. I understand. What you're doing right now is also important work, and you as an artist is influencing some other areas of the world. If you don't want to get into it, I won't. I'm hinting at you to get into it, as you can tell.
I mean, this by great coincidence, my day job. Good one, Tasha. My day job is I work for the UN, and I do development advocacy. You do capacity building in developing countries for people to prepare for and manage disasters of any kind. It's just a coincidence that that's my day job, and because I like advocating for, had the song go, the people more darker than blue.
Yeah.
I love the people who are darker than blue, as my man Curtis Mayfield says. So it just so happens they are the subject of my art, and when I'm lucky, they are the subject of my day job, which is advocating and teaching advocacy to people in developing countries, and for the UN.
That I wanted to say something real quick, is that's important work, Dimitry, because I was thinking about some of the artists, some of the painters and visual artists that I came across when I was in Mali, and one of the things I'm trying to do is try to write about their work, because artists, and you know this because you're Francophone and you travel around the Francophone world.
I spent 6 months in Mali. I spent 6 months in Mali doing the war.
Yeah,
I just came back.
Artists in the Francophone world do not get the kind of exposure that they would, that artists even on the continent of Africa that are in Anglophone places. So one of the things that I'm trying to do, if we call this activism or whatever, is trying to write about their work and place articles in art magazines and stuff like that, so that they can so that they can get exposure that they would not get purely because of language. Because language is a barrier. It's not the quality of the art. It's not the practice. It's not the diligence. It's not the training. It's almost entirely the language and the colonial relationship, right?
Yeah.
When those painters get exposed, where do they have to go? They go to other Francophone countries, or they go to Paris, or they go to wherever, and then it stops, right? Because they tend to not make it they tend to not make it to the Anglophone world. They stop in Paris.
It's really hard. Yeah.
It's really hard to break outside of that. So one of my goals is, I was really trying to say for you is that work that you're doing, the advocacy work and all of that is super important, because that's how we build the bridges across the Atlantic, right?
I want to go to questions soon.
But Fred, let's wrap about that Mali book. Let's wrap about that.
Yes, sir.
So
let's do that.
So I want to go to questions soon, right? But I also want to, Janice, you got to do this in a minute. I apologize. You got to do this in 1 minute. So you were in a non-big urban center like Chicago, New York, and LA. And Darkroom Collective, as I've always understood it, was kind of born out of that same idea of getting folks who are not in the big cities a voice and an opportunity. Am I correct on that? You got a minute, though. I got to answer some of these questions from the crowd.
Darkroom Collective was started by mostly undergraduates in Cambridge. And the first iteration of it was as a writing workshop, and then it became a reading series. But we brought people from all over the country to read at the series, like a younger writer and a more established writer. So it was actually international because people started to call us and say that they wanted to read on the series. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. That was, people were calling us and say, we want to read. And then the group of, people that started to travel and read around, that happened a little bit later. But basically the dark room started with young people in their 20s, sometimes working two jobs and going to school. It started in a very humble way with a big idea.
It's like I gotta do the minute up. So we have a few questions. We only have 3 minutes, so I apologize. I'm not picking Jacqueline because she just booked me for a gig, but we're gonna go with Jacqueline first. Shout out to Jacqueline Johnson. She did just book me for a gig though, so she gets the first love. What are your next projects? Starting with Janice. What is your next project?
I have an album that I'm releasing in the next week or so.
More to dance to.
Hello.
More to dance to.
Hello.
All right, Fred Joyner, what is your next project?
I'm curating an exhibition at UNC Chapel Hill. Visual art exhibition I'm curating.
You said you want me and Desan to perform where? What was that? You said Desan are performing where?
Yeah, we'll work that out. But that's the next thing I'm working on.
Desan's on here too, so you don't say that. Dimitri, what is your next? Dimitri, also Dimitri. Danielle just said she's gonna hold you to your to that, just so you know.
Okay, I got her.
So Dimitri, what's your next? Next?
I'm gonna spend this time out here going all in on finishing the follow-up novel, and this one's going to explore a Haitian adventure, romantic adventure, of course, across the world of sports.
Like a movie deal coming. Like a movie deal. All right.
Sports and the U.S. and the jazz world and France. It's going to be an international adventure, but a Haitian going through the world of sports.
Nice. So I'm going to answer this one last question. Kind of feel we got to wrap up, but we can get it done. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Ron. Thank you, Simone and Stephanie and the rest of the team at Mosaic for having us here.
Amen.
Yeah.
I want to apologize publicly, Ron, because I took way too long to get back to him on this. And Tasha was the kick in my behind to make sure it happened. But the reason why I'm saying that is to answer Strange's question. One of the most urgent questions artists and activists should be asking right now. One of the most urgent questions that you should be asking is yourself. Is how you are listening to the needs of the neighbors, constituents around you. A major problem that we have with institutions, artists, and activists, we tell the communities what they want rather than finding out what they actually need. The second question I would say to you, that's to all my candidates and all my clients and friends, we are not here as activists only for the challenges, we're here for the beautifuls. Find out what the problems are, find out what the beautifuls are. If we are only fighting a war to fight what is wrong, then we are fighting the wrong war, and you are just a narcissist who's trying to soapbox yourself. Find out what is already going on that is beautiful, needs to be highlighted, needs to be expanded on. If you are not expanding the beautifuls, then you are wasting our time, and we don't want your inclusion. So I want to thank Fred Joyner. I want to thank Dimitry Liga. I want to thank my artistic quest, Janice Lowe. And I want to say thank you guys for doing this. I want to see him. I hate Dimitri though, because I was trying to be down there in the islands with him. And he said no. I just want to point that out. He's not my real friend, and that's